Good afternoon. It's Thursday, it's 5 o'clock, and we're live once again with our show and tell law firm marketing session. We got 4 out of 5 today. We've got Simon, Cass, and Charlotte, which is missing in action this week. He will be back at some point in the future, hopefully very soon. So yeah, thank you for joining us all. We are going to be talking about competitor intelligence today. Yes, we've actually thought this one through. We've picked a topic and we're sticking with it, at least for the first part of the webinar. So we'll see how it goes. But before we dive into that, let's find out who everyone is. Let's start with Charlotte. Hello, Charlotte.
Hello, everyone. Great to be back. My name is Charlotte Takács, and I am currently the Cmo of Novum Learning, which is a professional learning platform for the legal industry, professional services industry at large, and we provide micro-learning courses where you can develop new skills.
That's great. Thank you, Charlotte. And now we will move over to Cass. Hello, Cass. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I head up Flare Insight, and we're a marketing research company focused on law firms and accountancy firms. So we provide competitor research, sector research, client research, anything research, basically, and that's us.
That sounds great. Thank you very much. And then finally, contestant number 3. Tell us who you are and where you come from. Sorry, this isn't blind date, is it? Simon, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I am Simon Marshall. I'm the founder of TBD Marketing. We bring the magic to law firm marketing. For small firms, tend to do outsourced CMO role for them. And then for large firms, we help firms really massively perform on digital marketing. So yeah, if you've got any queries on the digital marketing front, drop me a line.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to do my bit because I always forget. David Sayce, I'm digital marketing consultant. I work with a range of professional services firms and some other B2B firms as well. And I look at a lot of the technical stuff. So from the SEO side, technical SEO, as well as the wider strategic view of digital marketing and how you can get the most out of those channels with your business. So let's get started here. We're talking today about competitor intelligence. What does it mean? What do law firms need to look for? Is it a case of just following the leaders? What are the best tactics? Who's got any thoughts on that to get us started? Cass.
So we provide quite a lot of horizon scanning for law firms. And I think a lot of law firms do chase each other's tails. And I've used examples previously in this webinar around a lot of law firms describe themselves as innovative about 5 years ago, and then they became client-led, and now it's all pandemic related, obviously now. So, but yeah, I think law firms are starting to think more and more about what the competitors are up to, and in a range of kind of scenarios. So is it around how they're using different social media platforms, how they're making content more digestible? But I would say, and I can imagine you'll agree, that it's more around trying to look at what their audiences will actually digest, and what they find the most pertinent, rather than copying your next door neighbor.
So Kat, actually, sorry, just to jump in here, because I would have a question that, in your experience, is it the case that when law firms look at their competitors who they find is closest, and they try and do and position themselves the same way that their competitors do? So it's not the case of, okay, let's look at what they do, and that's something that we can't do, let's try and do something else.
It depends on the firm. I think a lot of them, more and more, are looking at what's going on in the market and then seeing if there's a gap there to exploit. So particularly post-COVID, different industries have radically changed. So what do they actually need now? And is there an opportunity to sell to a specific submarket, for example? I would struggle to think of an example that isn't confidential, but yeah, looking at where that market is going and seeing if other firms have started to talk about that yet, even if they do. So, for example, if it's Brexit, you can guarantee even the biggest firms within a market, if you look at all of their content and what they're producing, they won't be covering the same stuff. Even if it's banking or insurance regulation, they're always taking a certain slant, but they're not going through every single thing that's going on. So it's quite interesting to see. You would think the big city law firms would all come out with very, very similar content, but actually that sometimes there are quite big gaps there that other firms can exploit. So
that's because they haven't used David to tell them where their content gaps are yet. If they just directly got on to speak to David and say, please can you tell me what it is we should be doing? I mean, the whole thing's solved within 24 hours max, David, right?
Oh, absolutely. Maybe 48 for some of the bigger firms, but yeah.
Love the idea of that. So I wanted to seriously for a minute though, hard to believe, but seriously for a minute, I think there's one thing that I've noticed over the years in CAT, I think it was prevalent when we worked together all those years ago, is that people are really weird about how they choose their competitor groups. In my experience as well, and there's an obsession with looking. It's like that the Two Ronnie sketch, with the three kind of looking up to each other and down on each other and whatever as well. And then firms aren't looking that way. They're only looking up towards McFarland's and Slaughter's and Dixon Minto, whatever measure they're trying to use for that success would be: profitability, scale, reach of the client base, number of FTSE 100 companies, etc., etc. And what's really interesting is that one of the things that I've seen, and it is driven digitally and social media and things, well, there's a huge cannibalization of that market over the last 24 months by Stevenson Law, by Bellevue Law, who are taking employment law work from city firms as well, really rapidly doing so. And you've already identified, Kat, there's a theme going on there that, that market's changed. Yeah, it has client side, but it's also changing law firm side as well. And the things that firms were doing a while ago to win their first instructions from a client are disappearing to these smaller firms, and the firms haven't even identified who they're losing the work to at the moment yet. So I think I would, if I could just make one point today, it's the only point I really want to make on the competitors front, is please can you make sure you look across the whole market and not just aspirationally where you'd like to be thought of, because there are other people who might think they compete with you purely on price, but they're quite happily taking away some stuff from you. You've either got to do that to someone else, right? Or alternatively, you've got to find a way of describing your value and demonstrating it to your clients better so that they don't consistently walk off to those other firms as well.
I have to say it's always interesting starting out with clients and asking that question, who are your competitors? And sometimes it does feel like it's the standard list that they have somewhere, but it's often so much more than that. I mean, especially with the online stuff. I've had clients, they have X, Y, and Z as their mainstay competitors. And then you start having a look around online and you see, well, actually, from an online and organic point of view, these are actually more in line with who your competition are in this area. And I think it's important to understand that, the different channels, there'll be different competition.
Yeah, I suppose by sector and by service line, it's going to change for every firm anyway, isn't it? So, it depends on whether it's your whole firm looking at other firms or whether it's you as private wealth or litigation and who those competitors are. So it depends on the context. So sorry, Charlotte.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was also going to say that another thing that I'm quite fascinated by is how fixated we are on thinking that a law firm's competitor is only a law firm.
Yeah.
And especially from the digital perspective, I think, David, you can probably add to it. How many people Google their legal issues? Google is your competitor. Forums are your competitors. YouTube might be your competitor. It sounds crazy, and yes, okay, the level of advice that you get is not directly comparable, but it's legal information, or people perceive it as legal information that they can get, and
they trust the information.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I think as you say, whether it's a forum, I mean, something like Mumsnet, people will trust and feel a sense of authority looking for information on there. It's incredible how often that website actually comes up. But quite rightly, as you said, I mean, Google is so important with this. It's what people are typing in. And I'm amazed more firms aren't really seemingly aware of it.
And to Kat's point a minute ago about how it varies from service line to sector as well, there's another dimension, of course, as well. And taking in Charlotte's point, it's fluid, right? It's not a done and dusted game. So, and I'm not talking about just digitally either, but it's partner moves take place, team moves are taking place. Big Four have hired a team of employment lawyers in this country, or they've done, they've taken some immigration guys over there, whatever it might be. It's constantly going. And the good news for law firms, rather than worrying about that for a minute, is to say, okay, what are we going to do about it? And if once you've got I don't think you have to have a perfect sense of who your competitors are, because it would change so much all the time, right?
Yeah.
If you have a sense of, on a SWOT analysis, roughly where those kind of threats are coming from, and the opportunities will then emerge from that conversation. By the way, if you need one of those, call Kat. She's available 24 hours notice. SWOT analysis on your competitors. I think that people could do really well to do that, because it will inform a lot of the behaviours, Kat, won't it? That they should then be, not just in a marketing sense, but broadly in terms of their competitors and who they are. A SWOT analysis would take them quite a way anyway. Or, towards that.
It's often useful for partners as well who've been working within a sector or within a service line for years and think that they know the competition, or they think that they know what their market is, and actually giving them that external perspective of what others are doing can make them pull their socks up a bit. So it could be quite a good way of getting to know that position.
You're a motivational device. Is your This is what's going out in the real world. Here's the SWOT analysis of your competitors. I mean, all joking aside, if you go and look for the comfort that comes from a Legal 500 table, that doesn't tell you a great deal. If you think about those, there's nothing wrong with those tables as such, but they are inherently looking backwards 18 months or 2 years ago. One of the lawyers that I work for said to the researcher this week, you're going to review me about some stuff that happened in 2020 that will probably be highly irrelevant to the market of 2022 when the thing's being published. So, there's that timeliness to it. But we've bought into that idea that, things change slowly. Try telling that to those people who've lost all their work to, those ambitious and hungry startups that started over the last couple of years. I've seen loads of them that are growing great guns at the moment and hoovering up work. So all of those little startups or smaller businesses, perfectly good businesses, that used to feed into the in this point in the economic cycle, there would be big clients for firms in 6-7 years time, right? They would all be vying after. They're currently going to those small law firms who are in the same position. They're in startup mode. And I know I keep saying Stevenson Law, but it's definitely one of them, Alice's firm, and there are others as well. And I just think that not knowing what to do about that right now is not going to play out well, I don't think, in 3 or 4 years' time for those firms.
But to your point, Simon, and just to go a step beyond the SWOT analysis, there is also a Porter's 5 Forces, which is my one of my favorite ones. And that's brilliant, because that helps you look at okay, how do we substitute law firms? Who can forward integrate? Who can backward integrate? And now 2021 or even 2020, if it's been a time for anything, it's acquisitions. People are buying, to your point, Simon, people are buying companies up right front center. So just because my firm is specialized in family law, and there is this firm who doesn't have a family law department or division, that's not to say that they are not going to buy a small firm who deals with family law in the next 3 months. So I feel like, as you said, we focus a lot on what people are currently doing or what they might have been doing a year ago. And we don't actually think about, okay, if I was sitting in that firm making decisions or looking at my spreadsheets, what's my next move? And I feel like that's a massive gap. That's such a huge mistake in terms of how we think about our competition, because we are not looking forward.
Yeah, I used to have a metaphor for it. It was like I called it the Russian 2G telecoms problem, right? When Russia had a degree behind on the generation of its telecoms and mobile telecoms, and we were moving from 3G to 4G, the Russians weren't going to build a 3G mobile network. They built a 4G network. Like, those people who appear to be in your rearview mirror and a long way behind you in some of your competitors, look at the velocity with which they're catching you up and suddenly go, how does 20%, 30% growth play out in 3 years' time when they're taking that stuff off me? I like what you're saying. I think that there's, and I think as marketeers, you've got to keep an eye on this as well. Too often, a lot of the marketing stuff that we do turns to tactics. really, right? As in, without actually going back to, I'm not going to give you the models because Charlotte knows them inside out better than I do, but that element of a marketing role that says that we're supposed to define our market, know what's happening in our market, and look again at what we're doing. Okay, we'll get to budgets and other things another day, but really understand that as marketeers, we've lost sight of that bit in terms of going, well, what is really going on out there? What is the opportunity for what we should be doing? You guys know much more about it than I do, but I think that it doesn't take long to sit and spend some time on Mark Ritson's kind of LinkedIn feed to work out that we should be doing more that isn't just purely tactical on a regular basis. Should be thinking about
and that continues to be an ongoing issue across professional services. It's the marketing departments are there, and all too often they're flooded with the tactical, and it's the do it now, get this out, and quite literally not having the time to think. And they either need to figure out how to grab that space, how to look at the data. I mean, the SWOT analysis, Porter's 5 forces, long pest, and all of these are such invaluable strategies to help a business move forward. It's just having the time to review these, or you bring somebody in who might be on this screen here and help your business and help your business move forward that way.
I've got a question for you based on what David's saying. When do people come to you? What is the need? What is the prompt for them to go, do you know what we need is to do some competitor analysis?
It's either as a regular thing, so every month looking at different firms, horizon scanning, using their websites, LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff.
No, not what you do, but what is their prompt? Like what makes them go, do you know what we need to do is to do this?
It's marketing planning, so kind of January, February, March time. And then so that will pick up on the trends, what competitors are up to, where the gaps are. And then if there's a specific trend, it doesn't have to be at this time of year, but if they're going to put money into a campaign, they need to know that they're going to get the best ROI. So what's happening with other firms? Are they actually covering it? How are they covering it? If they are, can you put a different spin on it or that kind of side? So that's on the marketing side.
Do you have a secret squirrel network there that tells you what all the campaigns are going to be for later in the year, or how does that work?
No. What they've already done. So, I mean, you can't. I don't have a crystal ball of saying what's going to happen in the future, but at least you do know, and it's current to now, what other firms have done already, and you can look at the pattern of what they've done as well, because you can look at various firms and they will have quite a long-term campaign strategy of what their subject matter is. And you can see that quite obviously. So if it's retail, for example, lots of firms will look at what's happening in terms of the high street from a real estate perspective. And you can see that, and that's tracked over the years. And I mean, they might in a month or two time think about something else, but you can see that they are on a certain path. And you can see where the gaps are really. So that's
are there lots of gaps there that people aren't tackling at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I would say all the firms at the moment so a year ago, they were talking about COVID from an operational perspective, or it was actually more of a legal perspective. So from an employment perspective, what you need to do. And then it became, right, there are bigger things coming out, which were already happening, like digitization, tech, all that kind of side of it operationally. And they're looking at big themes, a lot of the big law firms, or even the smaller ones as well, but not actually sub-markets and what they're doing. So within about 3 months, firms started taking a sector perspective to what's happened post-COVID, but they're still very broad. And there isn't quite as much granularity about it. So
interesting. I just wonder what some of those prompts are that make people go for it. I like the idea that they would continue looking at it and keep a competitor thing over time. And I mean, it sounds like one competitive advantage you could do is just start a bit earlier with your marketing campaigns.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the kind of pitching side and CRM side. So a lot of the time, if it's a panel pitch, or they're a big client of yours, you'll know who your big competitors are, but you can dig through Legal 500, you could do a site search of the legal directories and see who the competitors are. I know they may be outdated, but it's interesting putting it in front of partners, because they just don't realise, even if they know the panel side, the huge number of regional firms that will advise that firm or that client. And to your point, Simon, those regional firms may actually get on the panel in the future. So it's an interesting one to put in front of them, and they can then start realising the kind of pricing that those different firms will produce, what their messaging is, and all that kind of stuff, so that they can position themselves to stand out. And if you don't know that, then you're kind of pitching in the dark, really. So
one of the things I was going to ask is, because I like the idea of the continuous scanning process, and it makes perfect sense, but I think it naturally begs the question of how long do firms set their strategies for? So their positioning, their messaging, their strategy, because if we know that most law firms will set a strategy for the next 3 years and power through it, and so what has your experience been like? Do they revisit the strategy every year, or is it like a continuous review that they have internally as well? Because then that knowledge, I suppose, would inform how frequently it's worth looking at what your competitors are doing, if that makes sense.
From a marketing perspective, I think there's a continual adjustment of different campaigns and what's happening, particularly in the last year, that you do need to horizon scan fairly regularly to see what's happening, both in terms of what's happening in the market and what your competitors are up to. It used to be pre-COVID that you would get, or I personally would get involved maybe once a year in looking at a certain sector, and now it's becoming much more rapid. So yeah, I think firms are becoming way more aware of what's out there and how they need to reposition themselves. So
yeah, and I've got a couple of points on that. So Kat and I are going to work on this thing that's coming out in the near future. I think there's a big budget review we reckon will happen, Kat, don't we, later in the year at the 6-month point. And I think the firms will look very carefully as to whether or not they've under or over egged kind of what they're doing at that point in time. And I think that's quite useful to, so at the very least, I think marketing teams look at things at the very least twice a year when they're thinking about that stuff, and they should include the competitor analysis as part of that. So watch out for that coming your way, because that's going to be useful to inform what you're doing at that point in time. I met one of the managing partners for VWV a while ago, Simon Heald. He had a really interesting point that I'd not heard from too many other managing partners. I'm sure they all do it. I just haven't heard them say it. And he said, yeah, we've got a 3-year plan, and yeah, we've got a 1-year plan, but they're both rolling plans. And I was like, oh. And he said, so it's absolutely pointless having a partner achieve something in week 1 of year 1 and then them clinging onto that for the rest of the year as if it's the only thing they've got to do. And he said, yeah, if somebody walks through the door and hands you an X million pound X, or you hire a team and you achieve it that way, then I'll set them a new challenge that means that we then push the game forward from there. And I thought it was a really interesting, like, and you might say never satisfied, but there's an idea of that kind of rolling plan that you get a sense that he's definitely got his hand on the tiller with what's going on in the firm and understanding what's happening out there. That needs to be always informed by competitor analysis, of course.
And I think that rolling plan is something that, I remember not too long ago, a lot of the firms I was talking about, it was literally a case of dusting off the strategy plan that may have been sitting there for 2 years already, and yeah, they were just plugging through it, or actually probably they hadn't looked at it in 18 months or so. But I think it's to remember that the strategic views, strategic documents, they're living documents.
I wonder if it's a bit like I know I've used the metaphor before with the sailing point, but I wonder if it's a bit like sailing. Let me try something for a minute. Let me try something. What would you say the following brand is most famous for? Deloitte.
Famous for, or what's the first thing that comes into our mind?
What's the first thing that comes into your mind?
Consultancy.
Okay.
Insightful.
Okay. Right. I'd say it's technology, right? As in, as their thing above and beyond everything else. I'd say it's technology, right? And if you go back and look at their campaigns, I think over that 20 years, there's no year in which they haven't campaigned massively on technology as at the heart of what they do. Although I'm not saying they don't do all of those other things as well, but I think that I was just thinking about that idea of a bit like sailing. It's okay to tack, you know, and change course, but you've got to still be heading for the destination. There's no point, you know, ending up at a different bar to everyone else because you couldn't be bothered to aim for the right destination. Do you know what I mean? And you've got to keep your eyes on that kind of long-term thing. And I think they've been rewarded with it, right? If you ask most people about that technology kind of side of things, they lead in it. And we rank them this week on global website rankings. And against like Facebook's number 1, Google's number 2, Deloitte's is 564. Can you imagine like having a professional services brand that's that powerful that it comes that high up the ranking? By the way, just for context, DLA Piper, top ranked law firm, is 15,673. So that is, I mean, there's a gulf of difference in terms. I know the scale of their business is huge and whatever as well, but the idea of being consistent over time to a campaign. I like what Kat's saying about that, you know, they need to kind of look at this stuff, but I think it's got to be a bit of both, hasn't it, as well? Be led by, you know, this is really core business for us as well, and we've got to carry on doing it anyway.
What I was just going to say is that my only concern with a rolling plan is that I don't know how great of a management practice that is, but I think that's my personal opinion. A few weeks ago we had a very interesting just like a LinkedIn conversation, I suppose, under a post about how constant dissatisfaction with your current state might be a motivator for what you do in the future, and I found that whole concept very interesting. But I suppose from the management perspective, and again, this is a very person-to-person thing, at least I believe, because I'm the kind of person who needs a stroke on the head every now and then to know that I'm doing well. Thank you, the virtual. But my point is that I question whether the concern that, you know, those law firms who achieve or who are able to achieve those numbers that they set, say for a year, their issue or in 3 months, so they can achieve their 1-year plan in 3 months. I wonder whether the problem is that actually that goal was just not ambitious enough. So really what they have an issue with is not a 1-year plan. What they have an issue with is that they are just not very good at determining
planning.
What is an ambitious goal, which is achievable as such, but it's not easy to do.
I'll ask Simon Hill to come on next week, and you can rigorously examine his rolling planning. I'm joking.
Please do. I love live
marketing. Poor guy.
I think you know that can be a big issue when it comes to the strategic planning, and especially, you know, I find especially with some of the digital stuff, talking with clients recently, thinking about, you know, what sort of traffic uplift should we have in the strategy over the next year? What sort of conversion goal increase should we be looking at? And, you know, there is a time when you're starting this where it is a little bit of a finger in the air, let's take a guess and see what goes. But then it's making sure that you learn from that and put something a bit more realistic in if you find that either way it's just not working.
Because also what I was going to say is, and again, I've never been in-house in a law firm, so I'm just thinking out loud. And
you're lucky.
Don't say that. But again, just from the human side, from the motivational perspective, if people continuously feel like, okay, this plan is just rolling and rolling and rolling, and okay, we've done 10, so now we do 20, whatever that might be. I just feel like there is no sense of achievement. You know, like, is there no, you know, let's celebrate a little bit what has just happened? Or, you know, let's just be really happy that we overachieved our goals. That there's a standard practice in any tech business, in any well, most businesses, to be honest, that, you know, if
You'd be pleasantly surprised, Charlotte, to hear that at law firms happens all the time. People tend to celebrate things a lot. When a deal is done, when a case is won, when somebody joins,
the drinks
when somebody
trolleys.
leaves, when whatever. The drinks trolley cat used to come round on a regular basis when we were together at the firm, and the cake trolley tends to follow it a few hours later. So yeah,
why do you
would,
not want me to work at a law firm, David? Sounds like my kind of place.
I tell you, I remember one time we won the Roll on Friday Law Firm of the Year award.
that's big news at the time as well. It was
We
big.
won it. We won it 2 years in a row. And I have to say, the senior partner, he went out and he filled the breakout room canteen area, tables full of cakes, and it was a chance for everyone to celebrate. And that was really nice to do. But I think it's important to know when to celebrate. And yeah, there is the problem with, okay, well, you've reached that goal, right? Now I'm upping it 20%, reach that one. And that's what you don't want. You see that often in sales, and that just can get a bit draining, to say the least.
Well, my experience is that lots of firms just copy and paste the goals from last year. So,
Yeah.
particularly not from the firm-wide perspective, but a lot of the time there isn't an audit of what's going on beneath that, and BDMs often don't challenge the partners on what they're actually writing down. So I think that's a big one to look at, shall we say? So,
I wonder if I could change tack slightly and just. I was on a call this week. It's to do with competitor analysis. You'll be pleased to hear. But
Surprised to hear.
And,
Sorry, I'm going to put myself on mute.
No. You can. No, I like it. It's all good. But I was on a call this week with a legal services board, and they were running kind of roundtable on online feedback systems as well. And the SRA is running its pilot at the moment, and the Bar Standards Board is running its pilot as well. And as you remember from a while ago, I did a report into online reviews and saw how firms had kind of dealt with that. And what's been really interesting over the last few weeks is noticing loads of firms are coming forward and they want to take part in the pilot. So much so that the SRA has actually welcomed more firms into the pilot than it ever intended to have in the pilot. And I have a feeling they'll still welcome more now. So if you're not into that and you go and look in these online review systems, that could be Trustpilot, Review Solicitors, or one of the 5 others that are in the program. And if you're from a law firm, you watch this, take a look at that, go and have a look at your reviews. And I'd encourage everyone to go and take part in the pilot if they can, or if not, go and get interested in what's happening. Why? One, because the directories fundamentally have been around what other lawyers and in-house lawyers as well have been saying about you for years. But the online reviews are very much about what's happening now and what people who've paid money, are saying about you. And they rank them automatically every minute of every day. And the number 1 ranked law firm on Review Solicitors is not the firm you might think it would be, given all the noise that we hear about other firms out there as well. And if you haven't spent any time on them and you work in marketing and you've got a specialism that you've got to look after, family law, wills, right? Commercial conveyancing, any of those kind of things, they're all on there, and you can drill down into those areas and you will find a whole load of competitors that you didn't know that you had that are going after your work as well. You'll also be able to set yourself a few benchmarks, I think, quite easily to say, well, why we should be performing at that level, right? If these guys, one thing that I showed when I did the report a while ago, I wasn't intending to talk about my report, but there is on the Google reviews, the average score ends up at 4.24 out of 5. Now, when you get a score of 4.1 out of 5 as a law firm, you might think that's a great score, right? Well, as I said at the time, you can't get 0 out of 5 because they won't let you on Google. You can only give a 1. So the average score immediately was always going to be a bit further north. And as it happens, it graduates to 4.24, I think it said. So but on these other review systems, you need to know what the reviews are, what your average is, what your competitors' average is, and how they're doing for those things. And it's a really nice competitors' review bit that you can add in. It's not the full picture, it's not everything, but it's a really nice thing to put into the mix. And then this year they're starting to add things at a personal level for partners. right? So you can actually see what people are rated on these things. Now, you used to have it on, is it Top 3? It was acquired Cat by Chambers, Gareth and those guys that sold out last year to Chambers. And it used to be in-houses would evaluate people. Charlotte, I think, knows them as well, those guys. And they're now doing that, but on places like Review Solicitors. And you can actually see, well, I'm most likely to lose the work to that person over there. And you can go and look through your regional Legal 500 table. You know, if you've got a family law matter, and you can literally look at the people and think, well, that person's a 4.8 and that person's a 3.2. And they're both ranked alongside each other in the Legal 500 table. But real life people who've put their money behind this say X. And I think the game is going to massively change. And I think the SRA wants it to change over the course of the next 12, 24 months. If you haven't looked at the work, I've forgotten Jackie's surname. She's leading the charge for the SRA, and she's doing such a good job of it as well. And heaven knows I've had my challenges in terms of how I might think the SRA go about some stuff previously, but I think they've done a really good job on this online review stuff. So if you get a chance, go and take a look at it. And Kat, I don't know if you encourage people, Kat, to look at it for competitor analysis at the moment.
What, the directories or the SRA?
No, not the directories. I feel as though they almost need to, snap up some of these other guys before it's a bit too late, to be honest. I was thinking more about the online reviews guys.
No. Well, the firms that I work for are bigger firms, but that doesn't mean to say that they may not be on there. The SRA, the reason that we use it is they can give you quite a good analysis of what a client's in-house team are doing and what size they are and all that kind of side of it, which is something that people often forget about. But so, yeah, that's where we would use the SRA. But yeah.
There's quite a lot of sentiment analysis as well there from the online review stuff.
Yeah.
So where there's 2 4.5s out of 5, you can actually work out in the kind of feedback and the language that's used. There are things that tell you about those teams and the things that are in there as well. I've just done this huge project. I can't say who for, but I've done this huge Google reviews project for a firm. I've mapped their offices across the world, 500 offices. It's not a law firm. And they, I can almost tell them where the issues are within their business, because the Google reviews, they're a proxy score for there's an issue here. If clients are suffering, then I guarantee they're not the only people, right? Your people probably will be too. Sorry, Charlotte.
It's Glassdoor as well, and how your employees are rating you as well. I haven't got the exact average, but I always see if they're 3.7, it's like meh, that's average. But if they're above or below, there's something desperate going on. So it's very interesting.
3.7 on Google reviews is poor. 3.7 on Amazon reviews is
on Glassdoor, that seems to be the average. So
yeah, they've got a weighted average, so you can't actually leap straight towards a 5 out of 5 with Glassdoor. If you give someone a 5, it's got a weighted. It'll only move them to a certain score, and the reason they coagulate around the middle is because they don't ever get enough volume to it. So the report that I should not be mentioning it has got all that detail on Glassdoor in there as well. I'll share the link later on if people want it.
But I think, this is something that a lot of firms either don't look at or probably aren't aware of. I mean, we've talked before about online reputation. It's an area that, and with some of the work that I do, reviewing websites and companies' digital channels, look at. And, it's what happens when people have that first touch point with a business. What are they seeing? And sometimes it is absolutely horrific. And we've mentioned Review Solicitors, Google, Glassdoor. There's a fair few out there, and even the worst is when you have a business and it's their own knowledge panel, Google My Business, which has those horrendous comments from somebody who's not happy, and nobody has ever put a rebuttal against it or said anything. It's just left hanging there. And for somebody looking at the reputation, comparing a couple of firms, it doesn't take much to make the decision, well, actually I'm going to go with this one. They just seem better from the reviews.
Yeah, absolutely. What I was going to say is that, just so we leave people with something practical, if we were to put our heads together to say this is how we would tackle the most comprehensive competitor analysis yet, what are we looking at? Where are we starting digging?
In terms of sources,
yeah, so let's say let's leave people with something practical. I think that would be kind. And say, you know,
Yeah.
what are we looking at? Where are we going for all the information? And what is it that people can look at to sort of look into the future and not fall into that trap that we identified at the start of looking at the right now, or, you know, in a worst case, a year ago. What are the tendencies? What are the indicator signs that we can look at to have like a really robust idea? Because I might jump in here with the first, and that's something that we didn't speak about yet, and I'm actually just keen to hear what you guys think. Is because I'm very keen on consumer psychology, as I think it has come out over the past weeks, and I'm very interested in how people change their behaviors in their personal lives and how that's affecting the way they consume things. So suddenly the appeal of a firm changes because there was a change happening in your personal life. So, you know, say because of COVID, we started escaping into the digital world. So gamification and escapism have become a thing, and people were suddenly watching a lot more TV, were playing a lot more online games as private individuals. So suddenly a firm like, let's use Stevens or Law, you know, just because we didn't talk about them enough yet, you know, their imagery, for me, my instinct reaction was, oh my God, but like their imagery is so gamified. That is fun. That is lighthearted. That is everything which aligns with your personal life, or the change that is going on in your personal life, that you suddenly find that kind of imagery more appealing. So it's not that they have become any different in terms of what they do as a firm, but their brand image has become something more relevant. So that was a long-winded end, sorry. My point was that, you know, do we look at what's happening in people's personal lives? And
well, what I heard that you were just saying there was that I think that they, okay, let's just be really clear about what Alice and those guys have done. It's not just Alice, but it is the whole team there as well. What they've done is identified a gap in the market, right, at a price point that works, and they've said, let's structure it this way. And then they've thought about the people that they want to market to, and they've done a proper marketing job and said, okay, if I were a young, hip, tech kind of person, I couldn't afford to have a GC in-house on a regular basis, but I wanted access to, and they thought about all of it, and they put it on a piece of paper, and then it made a load of sense, right? And now you try and take that model backwards and say, okay, can someone else emulate it, do a subscription-based, you know, GC model or whatever it might be? That's actually, other firms are trying to emulate it. I know they are, but you know, I think that they've also married it with the kind of branding and elements that would appeal to exactly their target audience. So they haven't got a great plan on paper, they've got great execution as well. And I don't think it's that common with law firms. Quite a lot of the latter is happenstance, I think, as well. The odd octopus aside, I might add, okay, which is still my favorite thing I've found out on these videos by some distance. I was thinking about it yesterday. I can't get my mock octopus out of the mind. It's flipping genius. But in terms of the competitive stuff, what you would do otherwise, okay, so I, you know, of all of us, I'm probably the geeky Mr. Data guy. I would just say, for starting point, or subject to whatever Kat's got to say as well, I think just go and look for more of that data and try and record it. I literally, like, who did you lose your pictures to? And not just anecdotally, but actually, who else was up for those pictures and presentations? Who did you lose to? Okay, I heard that we lost on price. Let's scrub that out for a minute. What else did we lose on? Like, really find out the answers to those questions. And there will be gaps. There'll be things that you could have done, should have done better to win that. There is nothing client side as an issue. There's nothing. It's on you to own the challenge there. We didn't display our value enough. We sent the wrong person, whatever it might have been, right? If I could look anywhere on the competitor side of things, I think you could do better. take it to the money. And you're not going to expect the PR guy to say that. We start out with money. Where did we lose things to other people? What are we going to do about it? Are we okay to lose that piece of work? And it does something else. I would spend my time there at first. I don't know, Kat, if you were going to think about. Oh, sorry, Charlotte.
Sorry, I was just going to say, where do you go for that information? So that's what we are looking at.
You crowdsource a lot of that internally from your own partners, and not just anecdotally. I think you've got to have a mechanism and a structure of doing it. Most firms will be capturing some of that information, but I would suggest that it's too confirmation bias at the moment. It's like we lost on price, I can't name the firm, but someone used to say all the time, "Oh, we lost the price to X again." It was like, and it became this thing within the firm I was at. They would always lose work to that other firm, and it's like, well, is that actually true? Because there were 3 other firms up for the review, and yeah, they might have emerged, but those other firms have also lost. So are you going for the wrong work? Is the bigger question, right? Are you too big a firm now to be doing this? See what I mean? Like, I think it allows you to start asking better questions if you have a bit of data in place first.
Because there's a lot of stuff internally. What I use a lot of the time is I curate LinkedIn, so I follow company feeds. And if you're looking at target markets, so a tab that I've got open at the moment is Cushman & Wakefield's Global Logistics Outlook, and I saw that on LinkedIn. So I'm not checking all of this stuff on various websites. I'm just saving stuff down and having a look at it. So you can track your competitors, looking at their company pages. If you are within a certain sector, start following those most pertinent consultancies, and they will give you that information that you need to know, which can help you have that rolling view of what's going on in your target market and then how your competitors are presenting themselves. And particularly, it's obvious that you're going to see the digital side on LinkedIn as well. So what people are doing that's more fancy and what those trends are. So
again,
that's my technical term.
Again, subscribe to the Digital 100 and we'll tell you the answer. So that's absolutely fine.
But Kat, sorry, just I'm really enjoying. Can I be the devil's advocate for the rest of the show? So, but don't you find that with LinkedIn, that's a shop window? I'm thinking if you're a marketing exec, or if you're not a person who's doing the research, then how do you get that watching brief? And that should be on everybody's list, really. It shouldn't be that you automatically go to the researcher. It should be everybody's level of awareness should be at a certain point, rather than just being focused on your own firm. So yeah, that's why I was talking about LinkedIn. So.
I think it's about the behavior. It's a really good question. I think Charlotte's asking the right questions. I was like, okay, so what practical, or what are they doing about it? And the point is, at the moment, not enough of it is happening, right? So it's actually pretty low hanging fruit. And if you went and did it purely via LinkedIn, you'd come up with a better answer than anyone else. And one of the people who's been on this webinar is a perfect exemplar of that, and that's Dominic. Because as soon as I started sharing some things and showing some data, this, that, and he's inquisitive. And he reached out. He's like, well, what's that about? And why do we come there? And he just asked me the questions. Someone from Slater and Gordon wrote to me 2 days ago and said, okay, great. We came top. I'm really, really Digital 100, in case I haven't mentioned it. We came top, right? And that's great. Why? How do you judge it? What's in there? And this, that. I love that. Ask me the questions. I've created this thing. I want to answer those questions. And I think that that behavioral bit of it is absolutely right, Kat. If you're an assistant, you want to become an exec, do it. If you're an exec and you want to become a manager, you better do it, right? If you're a manager and you're not doing it, well, there's an exec over there who is going to be doing it shortly as well. So just become interested in what's going on. I think the idea of having those tabs and bookmarks and things open and watch what's going on in your, I think with data, because I look at it all the time, it's about the aberrations, isn't it? It's about why has that happened? I know I'm trying to think of a better example, but I can't, and forgive me, but on the 9/11 day, when the first plane goes in, it's like it's absolute shock and horror and everything. So of course, and it was when the second one went in, except there's a guy at Goldman Sachs, I think it was Goldman Sachs, who went, that's no coincidence, and placed $100 million bet in a moment, because the guy was on top of data to think, well, that doesn't happen like that. Do you see what I mean? And the point is, okay, it's a terrible example, but I'm saying that we can look at data and look for things that fall outside of what's normal and suddenly go, what the heck is going on? Why is there an octopus on the screen and what's going on there? There's kind of random things that happen. And I think that if you're not even looking at the data in the first place, then you haven't got a clue to know what normal looks like. So I know it doesn't sound that practical, Charlotte, I'm sorry, but I think that like having your dashboard, having the ideas of what is relevant to what does good look like in family law leads in your area. If you're in the family law division of your firm, David, you've done enough of this over the years as well. I think you better know what the cost per click is on average during a pandemic, as well as the year before that, and have a prediction about what it's going to be next year. And that is your job as a marketer, to know those things.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, just maybe didn't say that explicitly, is that, you know, good competitor analysis doesn't happen overnight. It's that continuous aggregation of data, so you have an idea about what normal is, and then, you know, you can see when things jump out.
Look, there's no perfect data set out there, is there? I mean, not only is it all changing all the time, but all we can do as marketers is make better guesses. Right? All we can do as managing partners is make better guesses. Who makes better guesses in the legal sector than any other law firm over time? I would say there are two firms that stand out. That's Linklaters and Slaughter and May, because they always act earlier than everyone else does, and they must be using CAT's data. I assume that they're CAT's clients. They must be using data to inform their decision making, because every time there's a recession coming, they lay off people. Linklaters lays off people first. Every time they come out of the recession, Slaughters and Linklaters have contracted the FTSE 100 market, and they work for more of them than they did when they went into the recession, right? It's because they know if we do the right things in a timely enough fashion, they'll come out of it. However they do it, they take the data, they make a judgment call, and they use gut instinct on top of it. It's not just one or the other. I think you've got to have all of it in there. But yeah, I think having some competitor dashboards in front of you, know what's going on with other firms, understand where your pinch points are. Yeah, it's essential.
David.
Sorry.
Oh no,
I
bounce the balls around.
I think at the very least, you know, businesses have to at least be ready with the data, whether they're in a position to fully analyze it. Make sure you're collecting it.
Yeah, I'm going to make a really big thing, and this is for Kat, and this is for me. I do mean this as well. Do not spend your time collating data if you can do it at all. Don't. Pass out to people who do it for a living, and that is Kat and that is me, right? And then spend your time reflecting on what the hell you're going to do about that data afterwards. Because the thing that, Kat, you might be better at it than I am. I can give people advice as to what I might do if I'm in their position, but I don't know all the circumstances under which they're behaving. So when I talk to someone about their digital data, I go, look, this is what it looks like from the outside, but you need to make the decisions that are right for your business in the moment as well. If marketing teams can spend more time going, I'm going to make a data-informed marketing decision, right? That involves saving all that time crunching the data in the first place, in my opinion anyway. I think you've got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
I'd definitely say outsourcing or hire a data scientist. It's otherwise you're drowning in a data lake.
My point, just about Linklaters and Slaughter and May. My take on them would be, particularly Slaughter and May are so corporate led that they can see on the ground what trends are happening and they're acting on those, and that's something that it's market led rather than competitor led, but that can give you the pointers on where you should position yourself. And a lot of firms don't actually do that. So asking partners where they see those emerging trends coming and where they see the market going. It depends. The more sector-led firms are very much into that. But if you have a firm-wide focus and a market-wide focus, then lots of firms are thinking more about their revenue figures than where the markets are going. So yeah.
Just in rough data terms, how many future of work reports have you seen over the last year?
Oh God. I think every single firm has done some sort of future of work number.
Net zero?
Even more, genuinely. But more in a broader sense as well. It's always like, I have this huge thought leadership report rather than specific to this market, what is going to happen. So yeah, it's all quite broad brush at the moment. So
I always think that the really simple trick we used to pull off regularly in house was just to take two good ideas internally and overlay them, and just see if there's anything useful in the intersection of those two ideas. And no other firm will be marketing on that camp. They won't be doing it, right? And you'll have something to talk to two different audiences about, and it might be a relatively niche point. It probably isn't still, but if you're talking, you know, I remember this lovely campaign that Oldswang did before they merged into the longest named law firm in UK legal history. They ran a plus technology campaign. So everything they did plus tech. And it was really clever because it just meant they would go, oh, education plus tech or real estate plus tech. And I know we've got that now, and we add tech to the end of every word naturally, but they were ahead of the game and they did it. And they did that overlay game. So they wouldn't just ever go and talk about campaign on real estate issues or purely on technology issues. They'd always talk on prop tech before it was even a thing. I think that's quite clever, and I think the firms can do more of that. And that really, for Cat's benefit, it means that Cat doesn't have to read quite so many standard generalized net zero, we're going to COP26 reports. What she wants to hear is, what does it mean for the aviation sector? What does it mean for the whatever? I think there are loads of interesting things you can do on that front.
I think we've done this subject to death.
Is there a rival group of 4 people somewhere else that we don't know about talking about legal marketing at the moment? Okay, and we're just blithely assuming there's no competitors in our market for what we're doing at the moment. I would love it.
I think we've cornered the unicorn hedgehog area of competitors, so yeah, we're all fine.
I think when it comes to law firm marketing, unicorns, hedgehogs, we're pretty safe in our uniqueness. Small children.
This might be the first ever time that your dog hasn't made it.
I know. She's probably eating, to be honest. That's probably the only thing that would do it. I haven't even had a little head pop around the door.
Wow.
So
all joking aside about I will check this digital wonder stuff in the link later on as well. It is a really good starting point for you to think about the competitor. Kat, have you got any resources you can be able to drop in the link as well afterwards? Have you got
freebies. I'll put them on.
I think we all want to know what your logistic report looks like now as well. I'm keen to see that myself. So
that's my bedtime reading. So.
Oh, you joke about it. I bet that's an early market signal, isn't it?
Yeah,
Shipping and logistics, all joking aside, they tell you what's going to come down the line economically later on.
London's the number 1 at the moment. So
for what?
Price per square foot.
Okay.
Priciest logistics market.
What did I hear recently? I heard there's a dearth of garden gnomes in the UK at the moment, and that the Suez Canal issue has exacerbated the problem because all those garden gnomes are on the back of that ship.
I'm still trying to get over the Cadbury's flake issue, which just terrifying. Just when you thought things couldn't get any worse,
there's a heat wave coming.
You got to cut up your own Cadbury's flakes now, so you can have them in your ice cream. Terrible. Thank you, Nicholas, for your comments. I'm glad you're listening. Don't let us interfere with your work, though.
So what are we talking about next week, team? Because we are coming to close slowly. Have we decided, or are we keeping it a secret?
You keeping it a secret because every week we keep it a secret. Yeah. We
the speakers.
If we're lucky, we have a rough idea 48 hours beforehand.
But I thought
if not 15.
I thought Richard identified
about content, didn't he?
Yeah, it was either around content. I know we're gonna be touching on digital at some point, whether that's probably a bit broad. But yeah, we'll have a look. So content would be great.
To Charlie's point, if we look at content next time, and if everyone, it is a show and tell session, please can everyone bring some content, written content that they're kind of like to showcase a bit. Well, no, that's not fair, is it? Please can people bring some content?
Going to be another octopus video.
Spot there. Yeah. Like what? The written word? No thanks. And let's bring some content to the next session so that we can share that as well. I think that'd be a good idea. Back to our roots.
Yay!
That sounds good. Okay, well, let's wrap this up for today. It's been another fabulous conversation with all of you. Fingers crossed we might have Rich back next week when we'll be talking about content and how you can get the best out of content for your law firm and how it will win you business every day. There we go. That's it. We've committed now. We know what we're doing. Okay, well, just going to say goodbye now. So it's been great for everyone watching live, everyone watching the recordings. Hello, where were you when we were live? It's Thursday, 5 o'clock. Come on, you should know that by now. But until next week, same time, same channel. We'll see you then. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.